Pete, you've been to Japan quite a lot, right? A lot?
7 times in 5 years.
7 times?
7 times.
Well, that's appropriate. I just went to Japan for the first time and played Resident Evil 7 for about 4 hours. That would have worked out better if I played it for 7 hours. But
I
it was only
almost
4.
went to Japan 7 times, so.
What are you on? What are you on? Your 0th time?
He's been to Japan 0 times.
Yeah, but I almost went 7 times, so.
This is Dead Air. I'm Mike Mahardy, your host. I'm gonna put my headphones on. Pete Brown, you've been here a lot before. Jake Decker, you've been on the show before. Mary Kish switching the video. This is like our 3rd episode on video.
Yeah, I skipped one because I'm lazy.
Yeah.
I don't know what you want me to say.
I played a lot of Resident Evil 7. Capcom in Osaka, Japan just pretty much gave us access to about an hour into the game and just to play straight from there. This is the most anybody's seen the game yet. And after those 2 demos, people are kind of wondering what the game is going to be all about. Is it going to be like Outlast? Going to be Amnesia? I can say with great confidence it's very much a Resident Evil game. There's combat, there's item management. It feels very much like... We'll get into it. It's a traditional Resident Evil game, and I'm really excited about it. I haven't played the whole game. Like I said, 4 hours of it. It's looking good, and I'm pumped about it. So we want to do like an entire episode just like asking me questions or me talking about it. We have like if you're like coming to...
What's your dad like?
Ask me questions about Resident Evil 7.
No, I think you've talked enough.
He's
right.
good.
Go. Ask me more questions. My dad, born in Ukraine on this... The 56th Lord of our 20th year.
56th Lord?
Yeah.
Of our 20th year. Wow.
Yeah. Harvest Moon.
All those things.
Yeah.
I got a better question. Let's start with one of those. Let's talk about this Resident Evil. Like, everyone's stoked about it. And I got to pick Mike's brain a little bit as soon as he got back. And something I wanted to ask was, how much like the original trilogy is this game? Like, are we going back to our roots here?
Yeah, that's actually like kind of in a nutshell how I described the demo I played. It feels like Resident Evil Remake in first person.
Yes.
And by that, I mean, like a lot of people were hoping, I was hoping Resident Evil 7 would go back to the series roots. I just thought that would be wishful thinking, but it seems like Capcom's finally just like saying, fuck it, let's do it. There's item management. You have green herbs you're combining with chem fluids for health. You're scavenging every possible thing to help you throughout this mansion that you start off in, which again feels very much like Spencer Mansion from Resident Evil.
Is Mansion accurate? Is it that big?
It's a mansion. It's like a mansion on an estate.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say it's as big as Spencer Mansion, but it's this pretty large house.
Yeah, no one's gonna one up the Spencers, man.
No. Oswald Spencer.
Yeah. The 3rd.
And the architect, forget his name. You just threw me off. Frank
Lloyd Wright. Frank Lloyd
But
Wright.
it's an entire plantation in the American South. Again, there aren't too many connections to the Resident Evil storyline, but you do come across them. But it feels a little more grounded. Aren't zombies crawling across it, but what enemies you do run into, it's pretty scary. And you like hope you prepared enough up until that point. Feels a lot like Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, which Mary and I are playing through right now. And in that, like, the bosses, before you actually fight them, I saw 2 boss fights. Or I fought 2 bosses. I don't want to get too much into that because it's kind of a spoiler of what I meant. But you actually are being hunted by these people for, like, much of the demo. I played much of the game. Again, the demo I played started about an hour in, right around that dinner scene from the trailer that Capcom released, where the Baker family were kind of just feasting on human organs. And then you escape and you kind of start going around this house, and it feels like the mansion from the original game or the police station Resident Evil 2 or 3, in that you're finding these keys to get to specific areas. I know the overused term is Metroidvania, but it's more like the original Resident Evil. Like, I got the Scorpion key, so now I can go into this bedroom and this basement hallway, which led me to this key, which would let me get to the rest of the house. And then I have to go outside to the greenhouse or the shack, and that would let me come back into the mansion and get, like, the grenade launcher. It's awesome. It feels like one big puzzle. It's like slow pace, but pretty like confident feeling. It doesn't feel, there's no quick time events. Explosions were few and far between as opposed to 6. Yeah, you're not going to be like blowing up. Where was it? Kowloon in Resident Evil 6. That's Chris Redfield. Is Kowloon the city in...
Oh, I didn't finish that game.
But in the real world, is it Kowloon, that abandoned...
Kowloon is a real place.
Is that the abandoned city in China?
Oh, in Hong Kong.
In Hong Kong? Maybe that's what I'm thinking
it was. Yeah, it was like that very dense sort of
Yeah.
like apartment thing that was, I think, stripped away like in the late 80s or something like that. But people had to
Oh.
like wire up their own electricity. Like they never saw sunlight. Like it was a crazy little mini civilization.
That's creepy. But yeah, it's not like there are some influences from like Resident Evil 4, like in terms of maybe, I don't know, the action, because it's first person, obviously. In VR, I played it for about an hour in VR, and you're aiming with your eyes, and the reticle just follows where your eyesight is.
So let me ask you about first person then, because that's a pretty big shift. I mean, does that feel unnatural at any point, and does that make it feel not like Resident Evil despite all the mechanical similarities?
A little bit, yeah. You don't have the same situational awareness that you did in the first games, but obviously the first games were fixed camera angles, which was just a way to get around the technology at the time. But that became
it was
like,
more than that, yeah.
But it became like like you walk into a room, there'd be a zombie behind you. You'd have to actually figure out like how to dodge them, and like some rooms would play with that. There'd be a mirror here that'd make you go the wrong way right away. But it would actually, I don't know. Resident Evil 7 I did feel more control, but I think they designed the mansion well enough so your sight lines are always kind of like there'd be like a certain corner that's darkened and then something would come out of it, or they'd be like the basement was pretty maze-like. They did a pretty good job of not making me feel overpowered, despite the fact that it doesn't feel like just a first-person shooter like it might be like Titanfall or something. Like there's weapon sway. It's like it feels like a dude who doesn't usually use guns that just picked one up. It doesn't feel like you're not a member of the STARS team like in the original ones.
What about the atmosphere? Because everything we've seen so far is like pretty drab, and like I understand that fits the tone and like the story behind the family. But is it visually like that, like brown and kind of shadowy, like throughout the whole mansion?
It's shadowy, yeah. There was, I don't know, like some of the screenshots they sent us showed it like the sun coming up or going down at one point. And both the VHS tapes, like I think we talked about it before. It's like the story is this frame story in which the main narrative is this guy named Ethan. And then within that are these VHS tapes you find, and those are like the short segments that you play through. But yeah, it was pretty dreary the whole time. The mansion was brown. You get into the basement, it's just like covered in this mold, from which these molders, which look like regenerators from Resident Evil 4, if you remember those.
Not Mulder from the X-Files?
I never watched the
I
X-Files.
wish it was just clones of Mulder.
I never watched the X-Files.
That sounds terrifying.
Did you play the X-Files, Mary? Or see it?
I see
Play
the
them?
X-Files. I would not want to fight a bunch of molders.
Yeah, we're getting off track.
Are you sure that's their names though? That sounds weird.
Why does that sound? Oh, Spencer on GameSpot. His last name's like Kalen Mulder.
Yeah. And we call him. He's like, I think he's Agent Mulder in some of his.
Agent Mulder 47.
Yeah. Anyway,
Go follow him. Find
but
him.
like, they're called that because they're made of mold. I guess I didn't understand.
Yeah, the basement's like covered in this stuff, and every once in a while they have this very distinct noise they make when they form. So at one point, quickly to backtrack, when you realize you have to go into the basement, it reminded me of Outlast in that there's a subtle hint that the key you need is in the basement here. Much like in Outlast, like, oh, to turn the power on, we have to go to the basement. Like, fuck, I don't want to go down there.
Yeah, but it shows you it early, and
Right.
there's noises coming down from there.
Yeah.
So it alludes much earlier on that
Also,
you mentally don't want to go in there.
Also, the Baker family is the residing clan, and again, they're the ones from that cutscene. This grandma who's sitting in her wheelchair, just like almost like a comatose the entire time. Like this
Texas Chainsaw Massacre, basically.
this interruption happens, and they get up from the table while you're still tied, and you kind of wriggle and fall out. And then you look over. If you walk around the room, like when you are in total control and the rest of the family's around looking, her eyes will just follow you. And then you go to the kitchen and come back, and she's just gone, like wheelchair and all. And later, before you go into the basement, she's kind of right next to the stairs. She'll just randomly show up when you least expect it. It kind of reminded me of Grey Gardens.
Who do you think's moving?
Yeah, one of the old ladies. Or at least the documentary now spoof of Grey Gardens.
Right.
What were you going to say?
It was stupid, but I actually do have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
So you've kind of mentioned weapons and stuff like that. Are weapons, like how big of a role do weapons play? Because I think that's something that people were really curious about. Like, are there firearms? And they said, yes, there are, but it seems more like the firearms are more of a tool to get through an obstacle. Or is it like, are there some areas where you're just going to be like, going off?
Yeah, so you're not, again, you're like this everyman guy, at least as far as I know. I don't know too much about him, despite the fact that he's a protagonist. You're not a STARS character who's weapon training, but you're also not just like this schmuck. Like you're like crafting ammo, like bullets, shotgun shells. like I'm not supposed to spoil how you get the shotgun, but it's like the earlier games. There's a puzzle to get it, and it's once you get it, you feel a little more.
That's like a throwback to.
Kind of, yeah. I felt a lot more powerful when I went into the basement, but it's very much a Resident Evil. It's, like Outlast, Amnesia, you're powerless. You're just there. It's almost like the term now for a lot of like narrative-driven games is walking simulator, whereas like Outlast and Amnesia kind of put a horror twist on that before even a lot of these, like that term started getting coined. But no, you're not powerless in this. You're fighting back. You're thinking, so chem fluids, these items you find, you can either combine them with green herbs to make health or like other herbs to make like really good health kits, or gunpowder to make bullets, or like shotgun shells and whatnot. So it's actually kind of cool because when I first went to the basement, I saw the molders. I saw a lot of them like start to attack me. I was like, I can't hurt them that much because you can get headshots on them and then that'll hurt more, obviously. But I was like, all right, I'm gonna get out of here. I went upstairs and like scavenged for 45 minutes to get as many chem fluids as I could. So then going back down, knowing I still only had the handgun, I'm like, I'm gonna focus on making health. So I crafted like 3 health packs. Actually, it's this first aid juice. I'm not kidding. There's a very explicit and specific like cutscene, almost not even cutscene, but in-game kind of thing that you see. It's called the serum, and a big part of the demo I played, you're trying to figure out like where it came from. It's essentially like like I'm assuming it's gonna go back to the Umbrella Corporation at some point. This evil company that has kind of resided over proceedings in Resident Evil series for a long time, but it essentially just allows for crazy rapid regeneration.
I miss plants. I don't know.
So you combine chem fluids with the herbs to make this stuff, and then you pour it on your arm.
I just don't like the idea of the concept of health juice.
It's like kombucha you pour on your arm.
so like this, you've actually got me like a little bit worried here, and I hope it's not the case. Like it sounds like you said this is a big part of the 4 hours you played was kind of coming to terms with what this stuff is and how to make it.
It wasn't a central focus. It's just like eventually they're like, no, not how to make it. So you
but
figure
like
out
what it is, right?
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be kind of like that maybe MacGuffin's a bad term, but like the T virus, the B virus.
Right, but like the whole construct of this game in my mind is like you're in a house, you need to get out of this house. How the hell do you have time to even give a shit about stuff like that?
Yeah, so
how is it justified?
It's like you find out that the serum is instrumental to like, again, I don't even know why you got to this house. I started an hour in. You are trying to get out of it and survive for most of the part, but it's not just like, there's definitely a wider story that I'm not completely familiar with yet. Okay. That isn't just this Baker family kidnapped you and wants you to become one of the family. Right. I don't know like what the wider story is, but yeah.
Do you think he's like a journalist and he's going into this place to...
Classic maneuver.
like Outlast or
like a lot of things
or everything. Yeah.
Well, because you didn't know, did it bother you at all that you had to kind of like get out of the mindset of escape and focus on this thing?
Well, I guess like figuring out what this thing is and how to use it like against certain people was instrumental to escaping. From what I gathered, it wasn't like a clearly told narrative right away. The story itself, like the actual like overarching narrative, didn't strike me as great, but they didn't reveal that many details. Kind of
it sounds like more of it's going to come with the VHS tapes, right? Anyway.
Sure, yeah, because it's actually a cool part where you play the lantern demo in the VHS tape. It's just slightly different. If you play the lantern demo, you're avoiding this lady Marguerite in this old shack by the water, and when you make your way to the shack in the game, the first time you do it, if you choose to do the VHS tape, you don't have to. You play as this girl. Mia, I believe, and you kind of see things from her point of view in the VHS tape that allow, or at least like hint to you what to do in the present day narrative, which is pretty cool. It's not the first time games have done that. I just think it's a cool narrative technique, or just like gameplay technique almost to help solve puzzles. But yeah, it does kind of feel like it's that, again, Umbrella Corporation weird thing being forced on the story, which is kind of a bummer because, well, on one hand, you want it to fit within the Resident Evil story somehow, but at the same time, this is like the most grounded it seems so far because it's not this crazy lunatic like philanthropist like that just kind of got roped into this corporate espionage. It's this crazy cannibalistic and I think incestuous family that kidnapped you, and I would just like to escape. But yeah, because of the hints provided in the demos about Umbrella's involvement,
right?
I would assume something like that's going to happen eventually.
Yeah,
I don't know, but
it's
yeah.
Resident Evil.
Yeah, it's very much a Resident Evil game in terms of like item management, weapon management, ammo management. Oh, I got a grenade launcher too at one point.
Oh, shit, that's pretty advanced.
What?
What was that doing in the house?
Well, you guys have played Resident Evil 1, 2, 3. You get a grenade launcher in those games too. You don't have to use it right. You don't want to use it right away. I didn't even like use it for most of my demo.
What was it doing there?
Yeah, like so much of this sort of setup seems to be that this family is like removed from society, right? Like,
but they love their grenades.
Well, you're not.
But
they're from
they
the
order
South.
grenade
They love
launchers
their
on
guns.
Amazon.
Yeah, so that's what's
guns.
unclear why that was lying there. Because a shotgun makes sense, a handgun makes sense.
Yeah.
These VHS tapes lying around make sense. Even this, like these random, just kind of like chem fluids lying around makes sense. And so there's these drugs that help you see other items in the environment. But
did you find a lightsaber too? Like,
just a fucking like fat boy launcher. You can no.
He missed
I
the
don't know.
first hour, Peter.
Oh,
They
right,
explained the
Could've
grenade.
explained it. I wish it's not like
they invented grenade launchers. That's why they have.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like Doom if you played that, where you find a chainsaw and then the little description says like, "We honestly don't know what this is doing on Mars or whatever." That was kind of endearing, but Doom didn't have much. It had a story, but it wasn't like they were not taking themselves too seriously.
I doubt that
this
this
one seems like
game
it's
is going to be
trying.
being self-referential and make a joke out of itself. This is a scary game, so it's trying to
So give them a grenade launcher.
Yeah.
So give them a grenade launcher. But like it's interesting because I mean at some point you do have to be flex with how honest the world is because you're going to do surreal things. Like most Resident Evils put you in these ridiculous situations. You can't expect me to give me a hand knife and take down a giant snake. I need those acid grenades.
You can knife run this whole game too.
But if you
God!
But if you think about like the molders,
Mm-hmm.
if you think about
Molders.
them, right? Molders.
Yeah.
Sorry. There is like some sort of justification provided for it, right? Now I understand like the grenade launcher could be there to deal with a big thing, but that just seems so out of place. So like the molders, I feel like there needs to be.
But there is some like self-referential stuff in this because like if you in the original game they justify all these trapdoors and keys by it was a crazy philanthropist who recruited this architect to make it hard to get around his house because he was so paranoid.
Yeah.
In this game they're almost like they've definitely kidnapped other people. Like you find clothes lying around. It's kind of like the road. They come across the house where all the clothes are piled up.
Okay. Yeah.
But the grenade launcher I don't know how to explain, and the serum stuff I don't know how that ties in yet. But they do in one of these letters. Marguerite, the mom, says to the boy, I think it's Lucas, but do not quote me on that. She'll say like in a note, okay, enough people have escaped the manor that we need to like make it harder to get like we can't just rely on them to be tied to a chair. We need to like make it harder to escape.
Do we know the timeline related to other games?
I believe no.
So
I can't. Not enough to say right now.
So then it could be a STARS member, maybe, who got caught up in there.
Maybe, I don't know, because like the original game was you get a grenade launcher as Claire pretty early on Forrest's body. Sorry, Claire Redfield. No, sorry, not Claire Redfield. Jill Valentine. You get a grenade launcher on Forrest's body outside. Yeah. Maybe like.
She's carrying it around with her. She carried it around. She got kidnapped by a bunch of crazies, and then they ate her.
But she was a STARS member.
Oh, but
it makes sense.
So it makes sense that she would have a grenade launcher because she always keeps it on her.
And Forrest,
it's her lucky grenade launcher.
Yes. So as much as this game seems grounded at the beginning, that dinner, and it is not. It more so than maybe like. It's hard to say it's grounded, but the serum is definitely like a B virus because without spoiling much with the boss fights or anything. These boss fights get really crazy, and there is definitely like regeneration involved.
Okay.
And they even like your main character's like, how the fuck is this working? You get a pretty serious injury that nothing could cure unless you have like, I don't think anything could cure it. And essentially, this juice just like cures it. He's like, to their credit, at least he says, "What the fuck is happening?"
Sure.
So
I'm not trying to be too
right there with you. No. It's
a grenade launcher though. My like signals go off in my head. Like what?
Yeah. I mean, it was like it reminded me of the first game where it was kind of like I have this grenade launcher, but I'm going to save it in case I come across this giant snake or a bunch of these spiders or whatever, which you do in that game.
Or a giant snake again. Oh my God. Speaking of which, now we're talking about boss fights. I don't want to get in spoilers. I think nobody here wants to know what's going on, but I would like to know about the difficulty level. Like, how did you feel playing it? It seems like you played on the conservative side. Were you rewarded for that?
Yeah, this isn't a case of me saying I'm just good at games at all, but I'm very no.
I'm very, very good at
No, I am extremely, because I play a lot of survival horror games, I am extremely careful with how I use my inventory. So the boss fights were still pretty difficult, but it all depends on like how how like many supplies you've saved up.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to this one boss fight and I was rewarded for being, there's a word, like fastidious, I guess, with my inventory. And I could see how other people would have problems if they didn't have 6 health packs made and like 32 handgun bullets, or like that last shotgun shell that ended up saving my life or something. The boss fights were actually kind of where I loved it and also had problems. Of the 2 boss fights, of which there are multiple stages, they were way too scripted. At least one specifically. One, I don't even understand why I died this time and why I succeeded this time. Mm-hmm. And apparently there are branching paths within these boss fights where this can happen and this can happen. But the best boss fight that I saw again, there's 2 people you fight, but it's like 6 different mini boss fights. The best one I saw was just pretty much essentially like the best of Resident Evil 4 or the early ones where it just puts the boss in this arena with you and you understand what kind of space you're working in and you're using the inventory you've saved up. And even in certain points, I was sprinting away from this person, which I was doing a lot. And then because I didn't have time to search these shelves while like this person was chasing me, I popped these psychostimulants, which like kind of highlight items for you, which that allowed me to grab things on the fly and then go to they have a quick crafting menu, which, again, you just tab over like I think R1 or something and press make a health pack instead of combine herb and combine chem fluids. So I could actually do that I wouldn't have been able to do that as fast on the fly without those psychostimulants.
Meth.
Yeah, essentially. It's just like PCP combined with Coke and Molly. And
Molly.
Is that what meth is?
meth? No, I think ecstasy is like MDMA combined with meth, coke, or heroin.
It's okay. We don't need to go into this, Mike.
Oh, sorry.
That's so much
None
knowledge.
None of that was true. I have no idea what ecstasy really is.
He's got it on him right now.
I don't even know like what guidelines are for what I can say right now. I was going to say I'm rolling right now. I'm not.
I don't think you're allowed to say that.
Nope. I can cut it. Yeah. So the best boss fight just put me in this mini sandbox and just trusted me to hit the right weak points and use my weapons. And there's save rooms, so you go back to those and you like think ahead, like what do I need to bring to this? I know I need this key to get into this boss room or whatever it was, or I'm gonna leave the grenade launcher behind for whatever reason. Take the shotgun but leave the shells so I can free up space for this health. That inventory management and knowing shortcuts that you've opened back to the safe rooms was very, like survival horror-y as opposed to like Resident Evil 4 or 5 or 6, which is just divided into chapters.
So you can't leave items anywhere.
Yeah, there's save boxes in the save rooms.
That does not constitute anywhere. That constitutes save rooms.
Oh, anywhere. I thought you meant you can't at all. Only in save rooms, yeah.
So Resident Evil 0, the remake, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe it was in the original game. I forget. But you could literally drop an item anywhere and pick it up later. That was such a good decision, and I'm kind of disappointed to hear that that's not back.
Yeah, you think they would have thought about that.
I mean, I get it because you're in someone else's house and maybe they're there, but they could get into their own safe rooms, can't they?
Yeah, you would have thought that you could just like maybe drop an item in this basement hallway.
Yeah, if they're trying to capture that original feeling, sure. Yeah. But even playing Resident Evil 0, which went for that as well, but incorporated that shift.
Sure. I don't know. When's the last time? Have you played any of the traditional Resident Evils, Jake? Or just the more recent ones?
Of just the more recent ones, yeah.
Yeah. So that was what I was surprised about. I didn't see much influence from those in this 4 hours I played, which I was expecting them to kind of, I guess the comparison I made earlier today was like they have a kind of a difficult task with 7, like just like The Force Awakens did. You have people that grew up on 4, 5, 6 Resident Evil. You have people that grew up with the original trilogy and know how much, in general, I think those are objectively better as far as survival horror games go. Obviously, it's apples and oranges when you're comparing to action games. And then we were interviewing Masachika Kawada at Gamescom, I think, and E3 and whatnot. And then we interviewed him in Japan again recently. And we said, like, you kind of have to satisfy 2 camps. And from what he said before I played, he was saying, we're not going to satisfy everybody. We just want to make what we think would be a good game. And I was like, okay, they're just, bullshitting. But it does seem like they just said, screw it, we're going to go for the traditional feel just in first person.
Yeah.
Which is pretty exciting, I would think.
Could you see, like, maybe closer to the end, though, this becomes more action-oriented? Because that seems to be, like, a typical sort of arc for
You did mention
like
scripted
this.
boss fights.
Sure.
Ish.
Yeah. So that you fight one character and his fights are very scripted, then you fight another character and that person's fights are the better ones, definitely. I could see it kind of going off the rails, but I hope they kind of restrain themselves enough. But while you get more powerful, I wouldn't be surprised because you do get like better chem fluids that can make like incendiary grenade rounds as opposed to just regular rounds, or like just better handgun ammo, but you can also use that to make like a full health pack, which would have like saved you if you were near death. I also like I don't know where else. So I went to a greenhouse, I went to this shack, I went to this camper out in the backyard and like kind of around the swamp a little bit. But those parts were mentioned in these notes that I found, these little letters between them. They say like, yeah, she died in like the shack last night. We need to clean it up. It's going to start smelling. So every place I saw was kind of foreshadowed in these little, like diegetic notes and whatnot. Another one mentioned this boat that was washed up on shore in the bayou, and then another one mentioned this other place. And they didn't confirm it. I have no idea, but I'm assuming you're going to go to those places too, because you're kind of, from what I understand, for most of the game, you're on this estate, but it was big. Like saying that is kind of like, like Resident Evil Remake, you're going between the guardhouse and then the living quarters, the cabin, the lab. I hope a lab. I'm sick of the underground lab, which is in like every Resident Evil. I hope that doesn't come about. This very much reminded me of Resident Evil 4 as opposed to, it's not traditional zombies and it's not like Umbrella Corporation's laboratory hiding underneath this like innocuous place. It was very much just a creepy foreign place. And this felt more like that to me. I hope they stay as grounded as possible, minus the grenade launchers and minus the people transforming into weird shit.
The cure-all fluid.
Yeah, and this like miracle serum. It's pretty creepy. They didn't rely on jump scares, which was nice. It was pretty much just constant dread because you would hear this person stalking you on like this side of the house. You'd be like, okay, I'm going to jump down the stairs here, or I'm going to run down the stairs here, but also try to be quiet. But if I sprint right now, I could get to that room. Maybe it's going to be a safe room. I have no idea. But if I just crawl and just suck it up and try to be, brave about it, then I'll just get there safely. Yeah. I had like overall, I don't know. I don't know where the story's going to go. I don't know how crazy it might get later on. I can't speak to that. I don't even know how far into the game. They didn't tell us what chunk of the game it was. But it felt like a pretty sizable part of it.
Outside of safe rooms, are there any points where you felt like the Stalking family like wasn't a threat? Like in a lot of Resident Evil games in the past, right? Like you go into that one room and you'd be like, oh, it's just a puzzle. I know nothing's gonna get me in here.
So that was actually cool. They in the lantern demo they hinted at this, but you couldn't do the puzzle unless Marguerite, who was stalking you, didn't know you were there. If she knew you were there, it felt kind of cheesy. Like if she knew you were there, it would be like a red X over the button that you're supposed to press. So it's literally the game not letting you. But it would make sense, I guess, if you're in real life. But there were points where I hope it carries over. Like I thought at one point when I was doing it, I heard the person coming, which would be awesome. Like you're trying to like unlock something. It's like that, that trope where someone's trying to unlock and they're going through the keys and the key ring while the person's slowly walking toward them. It felt like that. I was like rearranging this item in front of a light source to make like it line up and make a crazy shape on the wall so I can get into this like secret passage to escape them. But there were definitely points where, I felt a little safer than I did like in the main entryway of the mansion or upstairs in the billiard room where I forget what the dad's name was. Was just like kind of wandering around searching for you with his shovel.
His name is Paw.
Jacques.
Paul?
Paw.
Paw?
Paw.
What was that joke? He's like,
Paul?
No.
Oh. Paw. I'm sorry.
Pam?
Yeah. I'm just going back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That family was so simple, and like that's how they referred to each other.
It's like the dog that
Grandpa
came back
Paul.
to Tombstone, sat down at the bar, told the bartender, I'm looking. The dog with the bandage on came back to the bar, sat down at the bar, told the bartender, I'm looking for the man who shot my paw. Butchered that joke. Take the camera off me. I'm embarrassed.
What about the sound design? Because that's pretty important, especially for like a first-person horror game. Like it needs to be believable. It needs to be scary. Like how is that?
Yeah, it was like I said, there were like these specific triggers that started setting me off. Like when I heard a molder forming behind me, I just started sprinting because I didn't even think I'd have time to turn around and shoot it before it hit me. In terms of like I was saying, like you could kind of hear someone mumbling to themselves or kind of walking around on the hardwood floor across the floor or across like this wing of the house and knowing you should not go over there. Yeah. I don't think there was much music aside from this ambient stuff. And like if there were a couple jump scare moments definitely where, it was scripted and it has to happen at this point once you get this item. Otherwise it wouldn't make sense. There were a couple moments where like it was kind of an orchestral flair and that was creepy. I thought it was like tasteful though. They didn't overdo it. It sounded really good, especially because it was like this pretty lonely place. And especially when you go outside just you could immediately tell it was like, outside, like crickets or cicadas or whatever part of the cicadas, I guess, in that part of the country. But it sounds great from what I remember. I don't know that it like particularly stuck out though, but it definitely drove home like the atmosphere and ambience.
Going back to like the original feeling like at E3 was like, this reminds me of PT. Now that you've played the game like in earnest, does that comparison make any sense at all anymore?
Aside from being first person and like this very, in terms of the pacing, yeah, it's so much a slower pace than like Resident Evil's, but it's not this psychological descent into like madness, at least now. Like PT literally was,
Yes.
you're spiraling down or whatever. It's not this kind of I didn't see that same like familial disintegration like The Shining or PT happening. Felt very much more like a Resident Evil, like zombies are kind of eventually going to become a thing, more of a monster movie than that psychological kind of disturbing sort of like even Outlast kind of had PT vibes. But yeah, it feels very much more like Resident Evil than it does PT for sure. I don't know. Played a lot of it, but I don't even know how much of the game it was. I mean, well, it was 4 hours of the game. I think 5 total with VR, but I replayed one of the boss fights.
But you
in
don't
VR.
know how much of a percentage of the end game that is. So you don't know if you played a third or if you played a 10th of this game and like how much more there is to uncover. I liked when you were saying earlier about how you were getting keys again. That's such a familiar thing, right? Like these, apparently in this one, it's like scorpion keys or like various pieces. Did it lead up somewhere? Like, did it leave you at a point, or were you basically like, or did they tap you on the shoulder and say your time is up? Like, did you get to an area?
So they had to stop me because I think I was playing the whole game. They only let me play a certain section from a certain save point. But I think I kind of touched on this, and this is actually one thing I did want to touch on. I think Outlast did this really well. You kind of know what you have to do without them like pushing you. They kind of just nudge you and say like, there's a note that says the power. You can turn on the power in the basement, and there's another thing saying like, obviously to use the elevator to get up to the psych ward, you need to turn the power on. It's like, fuck, I have to go into the basement. I don't want to. I heard something sloshing around in the water down there. I left off at a point in Resident Evil where I beat this boss and I knew exactly what I had to do. It's actually kind of cool. It was one of those dumb puzzles that no one would ever have in their house, but these people are crazy. There's this scale, and there was a lantern on one side, and then it was off balance. So you're like, okay, well, I need to find another lantern to balance that out. And then you're like, where can I find? Oh shit! Like Marguerite, this person that has been stalking me the entire time, is using a lantern to find me. So then you're like, damn it, I have to go like confront her now. And that like they don't ever say that. Like the character doesn't say anything. There's no note or objective marker telling you have to. It's just like, damn it. Like of course it was the lantern demo. Like she was carrying a lantern. So at one point they cut me off right there, kind of when I knew what I needed to do next. So it's kind of like in Resident Evil 3 at the point you're at right now.
Great.
You're about to leave the police station and you have the lockpick, so there's that like rusty door over near that fire you need to go to. It's kind of like what your objective is without them just outright telling you. It just makes sense, which is really cool. Like I like that kind of like gentle nudge than I do just like an objective marker, obviously like a follow in a Call of Duty or something. So I'm excited about that.
One final reservation I had that I was curious about was you played it regular. You didn't play it in VR, yes?
No, I played a little bit in VR.
Tell me about that, because when I played the Lantern demo in VR, very successfully scared me multiple times. It was kind of one of the few VR games where I was like, yes, like I'm into it. Like this is working really well. And then in the scene where they're feeding you all the parts, the guy grabbed me, but in VR, right, like nothing touched me, and it immediately sucked me out. And I was like, why would you do that? There's so many limitations when you add VR to it. Did you have any of those issues, or did you feel like it worked really well?
With the sound design and the fact that I was planted in the environment more, I felt like the VR is definitely worth playing. And this is one of those games where you can play like an hour outside of VR, save it, and then switch over to VR if you want, and keep playing that same playthrough from there, which that might be how I want to play this game. But I mean, I'll probably play a playthrough and then try VR. But yeah, there's a part where this one character holds you up by the throat, and so like I saw other people playing it, they were looking down at him. But yeah, there's still like a removal from him touching you.
That seems scary. It seems like a huge risk. I mean, I admire them for doing these things, like taking these large risks, the first person. And VR is such a risk for this series, because when something touches me in these games, I freak out.
Mm-hmm.
But in VR, my immediate response is, well, that didn't happen. So I don't know. It's like that removal. VR makes it feel like it is me. I don't know.
It's good that it's optional. I guess I wouldn't frame it as a risk at that point, just like an experiment, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not going to hurt anything for being there.
It's just
But-
like a way to market it to more people. So it's like you're gonna buy it anyway
Probably.
because it's great and it's Resident Evil. But now, in addition, if you don't care about Resident Evil, but you got this VR headset and you're like, shit, I really need another game for it.
Yeah, I'm sure
Now you got
Sony.
one.
I'm sure Sony recognizes that because there's like nothing coming out for PlayStation VR that we know about, like, or that's worth caring about except this game at the moment. So maybe that's part of it, right?
Yeah, this is a bit like weird for me too, in terms of like, I don't know, for like our site, right? Like for GameSpot, if a game is great, but it like doesn't work as well for VR, like, well, how do we rate that? Like, how do we talk about it? Like, isn't that weird?
It's weird, but it's a case by case basis.
It's weird, Peter.
Yeah, from a wider
admitted it was
perspective, it was creepy in its own way. From a wider perspective, I was like, I really don't want to go into the basement in VR because I know there's going to be less removal, obviously. Like, that's the thing about VR. It's the obvious thing. But yeah, when you're up close and this person's supposed to be touching your character and you don't feel it, that removes you from it. And when he's supposed to be jamming a knife into your mouth to feed you liver, you don't feel that, obviously.
Right before you said
Thank
that, I was
God.
thining there should be a service where you hire someone
Yeah,
to
I
like
was just about
do
to
the
say-
thing.
Yeah,
You just
but-
have like Mary mess with you while you're
Right.
Stabbing my teeth out.
jamming
Yeah.
food in your mouth.
Yeah, that's called what, like 5D? That's like
But yeah, from being in the basement, hearing the water dripping on like the cement floors and kind of hearing like more echoey and more muffled upstairs. I like that a lot, and I could see myself switching between VR and like standard.
You don't need
viewing
VR for audio.
No, I know, but I mean like the way the audio kind of envelops you in the setting. I kind of
The cumulative effect.
sure the overall kind of cohesion that I felt in VR until someone touched me or was supposed to touch me.
Do you
I
think
can
you're
see
going to
that
be
being-
wearing diapers when you play in VR?
As
Or
opposed to normally?
Yeah.
I always wear my diaper when I
Yeah.
play.
Dude,
Or
Safety
just
first.
go to work?
Yeah.
I guess maybe like overall though, like what would you say is your response from this? Like, do you feel like you walked away and you were like, hell yeah? Or do you have a lot of reservations? I mean, are you neutral? Like, what did this make you feel like?
I have some reservations. Like I said, the scripted boss fights were kind of worrying. I don't know where the story is going right now, but I didn't play the whole game. Overall, I'm very positive about it. And you want to try to stay as objective as possible during reviews and before you see an
Nope.
entire game. But
what? It said nope.
during previews.
Oh, thank
Sorry.
you for clarifying that.
You want to stay as objective. I try to like reserve as much opinion as possible during previews.
Ah.
I haven't seen the whole game. During reviews, it becomes subjective. It's
course.
all your opinion. Sorry, reviews editor Peter Brown
That's
for
right.
misspeaking.
Downtown Peter Brown.
Yeah.
Downtown reviews editor Brown.
Don't fuck with me.
No. Anyway, I'm pretty positive. As someone who likes the older games, and I like 4 a lot. I like 5, 6. I don't love or like, but yeah, I'm excited.
Cool.
I think it releases January 24th. I'm looking forward to
This
it.
is exciting. If you guys have additional questions that people who are listening about Resident Evil, you can tweet at us at Mike Mahardy specifically, who has played the 4 hours. I'm sure he would love to talk to you guys about it. And he's been really good so far. And like not just this podcast, but we also have an impressions video going out. And you're writing a preview. And Mike's been very careful with not getting into spoilers. So if you're curious, but you're worried, like Mike's is going to be pretty considerate about that kind of stuff, you guys can ask him more specific questions directly.
Yeah. Now that this was like the big, like last game of the year, we wanted to at least talk about. Well, it didn't release this year, obviously, but now I think we're gonna get back into, I don't know, movies, because I think Outlast 2 is on the horizon. I've been playing Killing Floor 2, but it's up in the air what we're gonna be talking about over the next few weeks. Might have to delay a couple episodes possibly because it's like GameSpot. We're doing all our Game of the Year talks and whatnot.
Holiday horror movies, man.
Dude,
Yeah.
I never saw.
We already did.
I
we
never
did.
saw Krampus.
We can do
I want to
Krampus.
see it.
Want to do that?
Let's
You
do
want to see
Krampus.
Krampus?
All right.
Let's
I
all
didn't
see
know
Krampus.
until
Because we did
laugh
Black
at times,
Christmas
I
a
didn't
few
know
months ago. Were you on the? Did you watch Black Christmas with us?
No, we talked about it, and I was gonna rent that. I was gonna buy the VHS.
Oh, we did a whole episode on it.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, you know what you
Did
did?
you buy it?
Did I go to Japan?
No, no. You were yelling at
Full
me.
circle.
Yeah.
End the show.
We can watch Die Hard, That's a Christmas movie.
That's not really scary. It's
Oh, what?
it's cool.
Alan
You ever
Rickman
walk
scares
on
the shit
glass
out of
with
me.
bare feet?
That's Terminator 2.
No, it ain't.
That's Terminator 2. Die Hard's the one where that dude made of silver is like chasing him the whole
There's
time.
only one
God
movie
damn
where you
it.
can walk on glass, Peter.
Oh, I got you both. All right. Anyway, that's probably the best place as possible to end it. Were you just gonna say something, Jake?
No, well, I was gonna say you didn't get me.
Yeah, you did. You laughed and said, "Yeah, it's not Die Hard."
I want to end it.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I'll probably cut
Get
all of
me
this out.
out of
Nice.
here.
All right. As
I'm
usual,
You
switching-
just got to go to Japan.
I'm switching to our new camera angle.
Yeah, as usual, you can email us deadair@gamespot.com, go to iTunes, review us, tweet at any of us, and let us know what you think, questions, comments, concerns, ideas for future episodes, and we're going to get back to Letters from the Crypt at some point to address
Fine.
reader emails. We have a few saved up. We just haven't gotten to them in a while. But yeah, anyway, as always, thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next week.